A senior in Ontario opens her old age security deposit notice in March. It is $200 lower than it was the month before. She did not spend less. She did not move. She did not do anything differently. Her pension was quietly reduced by her own government, automatically, without a single phone call. This is happening to thousands of Canadian seniors every single year, and it has a name most people have never heard until it happens to them, the OAS Recovery Tax. Most people call it by a simpler word, the clawback. And here is what makes this so dangerous. It is completely legal. It requires no warning letter in advance, and it can take away thousands of dollars a year from people who worked their entire lives and assumed this pension was simply theirs to keep. I have gone through the real mechanics of how this works in 2026, the exact income threshold, the exact penalty, and most importantly, the specific situations that quietly push otherwise modest income seniors over that line without them realizing it, often years after the decision that triggered it was already made. This is not a video meant to scare you about a scam, and nobody is trying to take advantage of you here. This is simply a part of the tax system that very few people understand clearly, and that quietly affects far more Canadians than most would expect, including people who never considered themselves wealthy. By the end of this video, you will know exactly where the line is, what pushes people over it by accident, and the specific legal strategies that can keep more of your own pension in your own pocket. If you receive OAS, or you have RRSPs or RRIFs that you will eventually need to draw from, stay with me, because this could be the difference between keeping your full pension and quietly losing a piece of it every single year. Before we get into it, then if you are not subscribed yet, please do it now. This channel exists to explain exactly how the rules affecting your pension actually work in plain language before they quietly cost you money. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell. It takes 3 seconds and could help you protect thousands of dollars of your own pension. Let me explain exactly what this is in plain language, because the official name makes it sound far more complicated than it actually is. The old age security pension is meant to provide a basic income floor for every Canadian senior. But the government also decided that seniors with higher overall income should not need the full benefit and built in a recovery mechanism. For the 2026 income year, that threshold is $95,323 in net income. For every single dollar of net income above that line, 15 cents of your OAS pension is clawed back. That might sound small. It is not small. Let me show you the real math with a real example. Picture a senior over 75 receiving close to the maximum OAS with a net income that is $20,000 above that $95,323 threshold. $20,000 multiplied by 15 cents on the dollar equals $3,000 repaid to the government every single year. That is $250 disappearing from the senior's pension every single month for the rest of the year, permanently reducing a benefit they earned through decades of living in Canada. And here is the part that should genuinely concern you. Above a certain income level, the clawback eliminates the entire OAS pension completely. For 2026, that complete elimination point sits at $154,708 in net income. Above that number, you do not just lose part of your OAS, you lose every single dollar of it, even though you paid taxes your entire working life. And this range between the start of the clawback and full elimination is not a small window. It spans roughly $59,000 of income, which means a wide band of seniors fall somewhere inside this zone every single year. Now here is the question that matters most. How does an ordinary, modest income senior end up crossing this threshold without realizing it? The single biggest trigger, year after year, is the mandatory minimum withdrawal from a registered retirement income fund, commonly known as a RRIF. Once you turn 71, the government requires you to convert your RRSP into a RRIF, and then forces you to withdraw a minimum percentage every single year, whether you need that money or not. That mandatory withdrawal counts as taxable income, and it gets added directly to your CPP, your pension income, and everything else, often pushing seniors over the OAS threshold without them ever spending an extra dollar. This is the cruelest part of the entire system, the very RRIF rules designed to make sure you eventually use your retirement savings are often the exact mechanism that quietly triggers the clawback on a completely separate benefit. A second common trigger is a one-time event, selling a second property, a large RRSP withdrawal in a single year, an inheritance that gets invested and starts generating income, or a significant capital gain. Any of these can spike your income for a single year, triggering a clawback you never anticipated, even though your income returns to normal the very next year. This is one of the most frustrating versions of this problem, because the senior involved is not genuinely a high-income person at all. They simply had one unusual financial year, and the system treats that single year exactly the same as if it were their permanent new income level. A third, quieter trigger affects couples specifically. If one spouse has significantly higher income than the other, only the higher income spouse's OAS is affected, but many couples do not realize their pension income could be split to legally lower that spouse's individual net income. A fourth trigger, often overlooked entirely, is simply the steady, gradual growth of a long-held investment portfolio. As dividends, interest, and capital gains compound year after year, retirement income can quietly creep upward without any single dramatic event, slowly approaching the threshold over several years rather than crossing it all at once. Here is exactly why this happens silently, with no phone call and no advance notice. The OAS clawback is not assessed in real time. It is calculated by the CRA based on the tax return you filed for the previous year. This means the reduction in your monthly OAS deposit, which typically begins in July, reflects a financial decision or event that may have happened well over a year earlier, something you may have already forgotten about by the time it actually affects your deposit. There is no requirement for the CRA or Service Canada to call you, text you, or send a plain language warning before this reduction simply appears in your account. The notice you eventually receive, called a Notice of Assessment from the CRA, does contain this information, but it is written in technical language, on a form most seniors set aside without reading every line. This is exactly how a senior can go from a full OAS pension to a noticeably smaller one, with absolutely nothing announced in advance, simply because of a number buried on a tax form filed more than a year earlier. Now let me give you the practical side of this, because there are real legal strategies that meaningfully reduce how much of your pension this clawback ever touches. First, pension income splitting. If you and your spouse both receive pension income, you can elect to split up to 50% of eligible pension income on your tax returns, which can lower the higher earning spouse's individual net income below the clawback threshold, even though the household's total income has not changed at all. Second, strategic RRIF withdrawal timing. Rather than waiting until age 71 to be forced into mandatory withdrawals, some financial advisors recommend beginning smaller, voluntary RRIF withdrawals earlier, which can smooth out your income over more years instead of taking one large threshold crossing hit later in life. Third, using your tax-free savings account strategically. Withdrawals from a TFSA do not count as income for OAS clawback purposes at all, so drawing from a TFSA instead of a RRIF in a year when you are close to the threshold can keep your reported net income lower without actually reducing your spending power. Fourth, timing large one-time events carefully. If you are planning to sell a property, cash out an investment, or take a large RRSP withdrawal, spreading that transaction across 2 tax years, or timing it for a year when your other income is already lower, can prevent it from single-handedly pushing you over the threshold. And fifth, simply knowing your number. Calculate your expected net income each year before tax season, specifically checking it against the $95,323 threshold, so that if you are close, you have time to adjust your RRIF withdrawal, your TFSA usage, or your timing before the year ends rather than discovering the problem on next year's deposit. None of these 5 strategies require anything aggressive or risky. They simply require knowing the rules well enough and early enough to make a small adjustment before the calendar year closes and the number is locked in for good. Let me bring this together into a simple, exact action plan. Step 1. Find your net income from last year's tax return, specifically line $23,600, and compare it directly against $95,323. Step 2. If you are within roughly $10,000 of that threshold in either direction, call a tax professional or a fee-only financial advisor before year-end, not after. This single conversation, timed correctly, is often the difference between losing several $1,000s and legally avoiding that loss entirely. Step 3. If you and your spouse both have pension income, ask specifically whether pension income splitting would lower your combined clawback exposure this year. Step 4. If you are approaching age 71, discuss RRIF withdrawal timing strategies well before that birthday, since decisions made even a few years earlier can meaningfully change your long-term exposure. And Step 5. If you discover your OAS has already been reduced, you can request a recalculation if your current year income is genuinely lower than what triggered the reduction, using a form called the OAS Income Tax Form. Call Service Canada at 1-800-277-9914 and ask specifically, "My income this year is lower than the year used to calculate my OAS Recovery Tax. Can this be recalculated based on my current year estimate?" This recalculation option exists specifically for situations where your income drops significantly compared to the year originally used in the calculation, and it can restore your OAS payment to the correct higher amount well before your next full tax return is processed. Write all 5 of these steps down in order and work through them one at a time rather than trying to handle everything in a single afternoon. I want to end with this. The OAS clawback was never designed to punish ordinary Canadians. It was built to ensure that seniors with genuinely high income do not need the full basic pension. But the way RRIF rules, one-time events and silent annual recalculations interact means that ordinary modest income seniors get caught in this system every single year, often through no fault of their own and with no warning at all. You now know exactly where that threshold sits, exactly what pushes people over it, and exactly which legal strategies can keep more of your own pension where it belongs, in your own pocket. If you know a senior with a RRIF, a pension, or any investment income, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, share this video with them directly, especially if they have never heard the word clawback before. A single shared video, watched at the right time before a major financial decision, can be the difference between thousands of dollars protected and thousands of dollars quietly lost. If this video helped you understand something that genuinely could have caught you off guard, please subscribe. I will keep covering exactly how the financial and government systems that affect Canadian seniors actually work in plain language before they quietly cost you money. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. I will see you in the next one.